We love Zencaster because it allows us to record the audio for our podcast and create the video segments we use for our weekly Sister Scoop episodes. Zencaster has helped us make content capture simple.
It's now super easy to record a podcast with Zencaster. Log in using your browser and start recording a high-quality podcast right away. Record studio-quality sound and up to 4K video with your guests, and feel a sense of zen knowing Zencaster's multi-layered backups ensure you always have your recordings in the highest quality, even if the connection is unstable.
If you've thought about podcasting before and realized that you need a lot of different tools and services, those days are over. With Zencaster's all-in-one podcasting platform, you can create your podcast in one place and distribute it to Spotify, Apple, and other major destinations.
Just go to Zencaster.com/pricing and use our code SistersAssembled, and you'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencaster paid plan. We want you to have the same easy experiences we do for all of our podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story.
Katie and I are always hungry, and one snack we both love is beef jerky. That's why we're so excited to tell you about one of our favorite jerky brands, Matt Hat Jerky.
Matt Hat's delicious taste makes it a great snack, and the variety of flavors, including original, black truffle, and my personal favorite, roasted garlic, means there's a flavor for everyone. Plus, it's local to the area where we grew up in, which we just love.
Use the link in the show notes below to get some Matt Hat Jerky for yourself, and make sure to use our coupon code SistersAssembled for 10% off. Hello and welcome to Sisters Assembled, your home for all things MCU, or in this case, all things MCU adjacent, because tonight we are covering our immediate reactions to Venom: The Last Dance. We both just watched the movie just a couple of hours ago, or in Katie's case, less than an hour ago, so these are fresh off the presses reactions, and I'm super excited to dive into it because this was a great film, and I'm just gonna put that out there to start. I really liked it, but as always, Katie gets to start, so I'm gonna let her go a little deeper than I just did, and then we'll really kick off the episode.
If we're giving top shelf reactions, like super high level, I'm gonna say I liked it. Yeah, I was enjoying it. If we're gonna remain top shelf, I am gonna say I do think probably 30 minutes could have been taken off of this movie. I appreciate a good long superhero movie when it's needed. There were quite a few things here that I saw the point. I don't know if the story would have changed if we took them out. Regardless, the movie as a whole was very, very good. I was very nervous actually at the very beginning because I was getting Love and Thunder vibes. And I was very like, oh, no. Because we saw what happened with Love and Thunder. It went too comical. We lost the story. And everybody ended up hating it for not just that reason, but that was a huge part of it. And I was watching this, and I won't lie to you, that is how I felt at the very beginning. I felt like this was a joke of a movie for the very start. I'm thinking, if this stays like this is going to be a problem. This is too comedic. I understand Venom and Eddie have that type of relationship and it's meant to be funny. This is still the core of what Venom is. Like, we're not meant to take everything absolutely the utmost serious in any situation those two are in, but it felt a little like borderline. They fixed it. They righted the ship. The story still worked. And I did really like this movie. I enjoyed the fight scene at the end. I was actually loving the fight scene at the end. I have notes, so I won't say no notes, but I'm happy considering this is a Sony movie.
A little bit of context. I had my showtime before hers, which actually very rarely happens. And I knew she was still in the film, and all I texted her when I finished was, this movie had no business being this good. Because we did say, at least from my perspective, of the 3 Sony films that were coming out this year, this was the one that I was least concerned about because they had done one very successful and one mildly successful Venom films, and they had built a foundation, and I'm not gonna lie, they probably have a pretty decent fan base for this character and Tom Hardy's interpretation of this character. I think a lot of people, myself included, are fans. I think he's done a great job with this character all the way through the trilogy, even if the second one isn't great in terms of maybe storyline and writing, at least in comparison with 1 and 3. But I was so pleasantly surprised by how much I enjoyed this film. To your point, I think it really balanced the comedic elements of their pairing really well. But at the same time, it was incredibly heartfelt. And you could see how much their bond had grown and evolved over the years. I shed a tear, I'm not going to lie, when, Venom sacrificed himself. He and Eddie have a beautiful relationship that I'm sure we're going to explore more as we get through this episode. I loved the use of music. I thought it was incredibly well done. The fight scenes were really, really solid. I loved that. I also think one of the things that I was enjoying in the fight scenes is the way that they were able to complement one another in the fight scenes, you know, both as full Venom and then as they're fighting, you know, within and sort of using the Venom, but not fully in the full symbiote suit and all of that. I thought that was great. I genuinely was like, wow, I'm really impressed. This was a very solid end to a trilogy. They paid homage to the character at the end and their journeys together. And I was like, wow, great job, Sony. Tip of the cap to you. Like, you made up for Madam Web. You put one real turd out there, and then you were like, actually, here's a little gem to make up for the turd we made you watch at the beginning of the year.
And not to stray, but it made me excited for Kraven.
Yeah.
Because I said that in the predictions, right? I sat here and I said, if this is good, I'm excited for the movie I have to watch in 2 months. Not even, less than 2 months. I get excited for it now. I'm obviously excited. I love Aaron Taylor Johnson. He's going to be shirtless. Everything's great. Everything feels awesome.
I mean, they're starting on a good foot, right? Like, I mean,
we are starting with a very great foundation. But now I am actually excited for this. And the trailer was before Venom. That was nice. Obviously, we saw Cap 4. A little shocked we didn't see Thunderbolts beforehand. I was waiting for it.
You got Cap 4? I didn't get Cap 4.
I got Cap 4. I've been getting Cap 4 for months.
No, I got Cap 4 for Deadpool and Wolverine, but I did not get Cap 4 for this one.
I've had Cap 4 since whenever the actual trailer dropped, because I go to the movies a little bit more now because I have a friend who really enjoys going to the movies, so we go see a lot more. And I've gotten Cap 4 for a while, and then when I got Kraven, which wasn't shocking, but I was a little surprised we didn't get Thunderbolts because my theater had a Thunderbolts poster already.
See, mine didn't have Cap 4 or Thunderbolts. It barely had a Venom poster. Like, it didn't have the full, like, 3D, like, stand-up that they typically do. I mean, I understand it's not, like, a full MCU film, and, like, that's a lot of what Marvel does, but, like, Sony didn't even have, like, the full stand-up 3D cardboard thing. It was one poster in the entire theater, and there was nothing for Cap 4, there was nothing for Thunderbolts, either one of them, and I didn't have a trailer for either one of them.
Interesting.
The only Marvel-related trailer that I had was Kraven.
Interesting. See, I had only a poster for Venom as well. I actually think, because I'm the one who posted the pictures, we had the same poster.
Probably.
And that's all I had. But I did have, they had the Kraven poster out in the halls. They had the Thunderbolts poster out in the halls. And then outside in the coming soon boxes, they had Cap 4. And then I saw Cap 4's trailer and I saw Kraven. But I was waiting for the Thunderbolts because usually they're pretty on top of that when those trailers drop.
Yeah.
They get in that system. They're in the rotation. So I was a little shocked, but I guess that's kind of a lot. 3 movies within the same semi-franchise is probably a lot to saturate somebody with before watching another movie in the same franchise. Either way, regardless, going to what you were saying, this was a great movie. I was shocked. I'm excited for Kraven now because of it. And I'm happy I liked it.
Me too. Me too.
I am so happy. And now I made a joke that I think I said I saw the first one with my boyfriend before we started dating. And then I didn't see the second one with him because I was in college and he had been in another state. And then I saw this one with him. And I'm like, so maybe we just need to be together to watch these movies because the second one didn't do it, but the other ones did. Regardless, I'm happy Sony redeemed themselves. Morbius and Madam Web had us watching something, but this was a movie. And like I said, maybe 30 minutes of it could have been gone. Honestly, I enjoyed the family, but their whole storyline really could have been written out for me. Not that important.
Agreed. They could have dropped him off in Vegas and been done with it. Like, I didn't need them to come back. Or if they were going to come back to Area 51, I didn't need so many scenes of them sneaking around Area 51. I just was like, can we get back to, like, the actual main character, please? Like, I understood that they were setting them up, but, like, you very easily could have been like, cool, here's them going under the fence, and then now they're in the watchtower. Like, I can fill in the rest. I have a functioning sense of narrative and how that might have happened. I didn't need you to spell it out for me. Like, give me those 10 minutes back. That would be cool.
I think the family as a whole I struggled with. I understand they were supposed to be the whole, that's how he gets to Las Vegas and fill in that gap of how he travels there and whatever. But if you really take out their screen time and you take out their characters, I think you have the same story, if I'm being honest. I think you could literally replace them with any military person when the dad shoots the one monster thing. Because I'm going to be honest, guys, names are not going to be high on the list for the things I remembered from this movie. There was a lot going on. So I will not be saying names. They'll all be described by things. But y'all know what I mean. The monster looking things could have been a military guy who shot it. to save Eddie. I don't know. They weren't the most important thing to me. That, and I have to say, they were losing me a little at the beginning because his journey to New York, which we don't even get to till the very end, which is fine, but his entire journey to New York, I don't think I needed to see all the intricate details of him walking through wherever he lands. Then he's walking there and they're having more conversation, which I understand important conversation, but some of it could have just been told to us and moved on. It could have been one conversation, I think is the point I'm trying to make. Then we keep moving. Not, oh, we're here. A little bit of backstory. Something happens. Oh no, now we're here. A little bit of backstory. Something else happens. That beginning part was a little rough for me. I will admit to that.
I had a different problem with the beginning, and it was the opening scene that immediately I was like, oh no.
The way I can't remember the opening scene. Oh, Null.
Yeah.
Yes.
I didn't need him explaining it as if it was a first-person POV book. I was like, no. Simply no. I understand you're trying to attract an audience who may not know him from the comics because he is a little bit of a deeper cut character. Like, you're not pulling in Doctor Doom, who most people know him from pop culture, right? Like, Null is definitely a much deeper cut. So I understand that they were trying to give that context, but the way they just cold opened it with, I am Null, king of the blah, blah, blah. And I was like, no, absolutely not. That was just, I don't know, I hated that. I hated the way it was done. You could have given me that information in literally any other way in another one of those conversation scenes between Eddie and Venom. Like, why was it done that way? That was so awful. That made me so scared from the beginning. I was like, I really want to like this movie. Please don't tell me it's going to be like this.
I can't lie. Now that you're saying all this, I fully remember having the exact same feelings. I also, for reference, and this is why I think I enjoy watching it so much with my boyfriend, who's more of a DC guy, because he'll ask me questions and I'm getting the first person point of view of somebody who is not so ingrained in this or hasn't prepped for this movie and fully knows what might happen or like who somebody is. So obviously I knew this was Null. We've talked about this. We've watched all the trailers. We know this. I'm not even sure if he's fully watched any of the actual trailers for the movie. If he has, it was the very first one, which didn't have Null in it. Having him ask me questions from the very jump of this movie, yes, I was nervous.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here thinking, I'm not going to explain this to you right now because I don't know where the rest of this movie is going to go. But to see from your perspective how you're already like, who is this? What is happening? What is going on? I don't understand this. I also was like, oh God, tell me we're not doing this.
And it wasn't even necessarily that they started with Null, because I'm sure, and I can't think of any examples off the top of my head, but I know that there are MCU films that start with the villain and you're kind of like, what is this? And then you go into the hero and you see where they are and then you start to see the threads kind of come together. That wasn't my problem. It was the blatant info dump and the way that was done. I was like, that is awful. I'm so sorry, but like, find a different way to give me this information that isn't you like literally hitting me over the head. I am Null, king of the void, and this is what my symbiote children did to me. Like, for 2 minutes, he goes on and gives you his entire backstory. And I was like, no, this needs to be done in a conversation. I should not be getting, like, Null's, like, I don't know, here's my autobiography in 30 seconds. That was not well done. I'm sorry. I hated that.
It's kind of interesting you did say that, because now that you pointed it out, too, we do have that exact conversation happen between Eddie and Venom.
Yeah.
So you could have taken out Null at the very beginning. And again, the conversation is made. Venom and Eddie have the conversation when he's explaining it. That's all the audience needed. We did not need Null to explain it to exactly what you just said. Also, side note, so I could say this and get it over with, maybe it was just me. Usually don't have hearing problems. Were you struggling to understand what the symbiotes were saying that whole movie?
No, it was Null for me. Null, when he spoke, side note to listeners, I do have trouble hearing lower tones.
That's why I specified I don't have any issues hearing, but I know Taylor does, which is why I was asking.
I failed a lot of hearing tests in high school until someone finally took pity on me and just started giving me medium to high tones so I could pass. So anyway, not that there's anything wrong if you have challenges hearing. I've definitely looked sad or stressed. But anyway, I struggled with him. He was the one where I was like, especially his second end credit scene or his end credit scene, I was like, it took me a hot minute. Like, I heard the important words and we will have a whole other episode about that. But there were pieces where I was like, I don't actually know what you're saying and I would really like some closed captions, please.
I didn't struggle with him. I was struggling throughout the whole movie with Venom. And then when I don't know if he's actually toxin, because that's what we all assumed after the second movie. But then obviously that didn't seem to come to full fruition, and we can get to that. But regardless, the mermaid kind of one, that's what I kept calling him. He looked like a mermaid. He was out there floating around. I could not understand half of what they were saying, to the point where when my boyfriend was asking me a question at one point, I literally was like, you got to stop. I have to full concentrate on what these guys are saying because I cannot make it out. And it wasn't the tone more than it was just the fact that I think the way they edited the voices just sounded so like mumbled and muffled a little bit that I could not make out his enunciation enough to understand some of the words he was saying.
I will say, now that you say that, I understood probably like 90% of what he was saying, but there were pieces where I was like, can you run that back? And then I was like, I'm not at home. I cannot rewind the movie, because there were things that I was like, I'm pretty sure he just said something important, but I missed that entire sentence because like I was struggling. But I would say I struggle more with Null than I did the symbiotes, though there were times with the symbiotes that I was like, oh no, this is a little bit of a challenge for me, and I'm definitely missing like vital information, because to your point, the way that they edited the voice to like whatever that is, I don't know. I edit this show, so I should definitely know what techniques they use, but whatever. Whatever they did, it did kind of make it a little bit harder to like understand exactly what they were saying.
It was almost too distorted, and that just
yes,
led
that's
to
the word. That's the word.
Yes, it was just a little bit too distorted. Otherwise, and I know it just sounded like we crapped on this movie anyway. Otherwise, we liked this movie. I have to say, and we're jumping around because this is genuine reactions. What Taylor said earlier, like we just got out of this movie. Remember, we will do deeper dives. And actually, this one has them, guys. We thought Madam Web would, and then we sat there and were screwed over because we planned to have more episodes and there was nothing to talk about. But we actually have things to talk about here that we will dive deeper into. These are just genuine reactions. But I loved this. The fight scene you mentioned, beautiful. And
Yeah.
I'm a sucker for these types of movies where they have all these different variants of one character that you followed all this time. And no, I'm not talking about Spider-Man, although Spider-Man does have cool stuff. Obviously, the entire Spider-Verse is built off of the Spider Society and everything. But I am a sucker for these types of movies where you follow one character or whatever, and then in the finale or the final piece or whatever it is, you bring in a bunch of different versions of them and you get to see this different idea. I'm thinking like low-key going back to the Power Rangers days. When you would follow one group, we were Power Rangers SBD, but you followed one group, but then they'd have the big crossover events where you'd get to be introduced to all the other ones you don't necessarily watch.
Oh, and then when they like met with Dino Thunder and it was like our streams were crossing so hard. Yes.
Exactly. That is what this felt like. And I loved it. I love these types of movies. I really, really enjoyed seeing the different symbiotes. I was sad because a lot of them didn't last. I understand why. It's not their movie. It's Venom's. We need to focus on him and Eddie's relationship, which we'll get to. I loved that fight scene. I honestly am normally pretty good at catching where I think this is going to go. I, for some reason, did not think for a second that all the symbiotes were going to be released. I don't know why that didn't cross my mind. I just didn't even think about it.
I have so much to say to that, and I'm going to start off with the one. Okay, I wrote only 3 things that I didn't like about this film, and I wrote them right away so I didn't forget them, because I genuinely really like 10 out of 10. If you're listening to this episode, you've probably already seen it, but tell your friends not to sleep on this movie. I just want to make that very, very clear. I enjoyed this film. That's why I only had 3 things that I was like, I'm struggling with this. And as much as I did enjoy the symbiotes, and I liked how it made it so clear that in this franchise and on this Earth, they are in fact the good guys. I thought that was great that they doubled down on the fact that they are actually benevolent. They weren't here to colonize Earth. They were escaping Null. And in fact, they were good even before they got here because they entrapped Null. So they are inherently a force for good, which, you know, especially in the first Venom film, is a little bit of a question. And if you know the history of the character and the way that he affects Spider-Man, that's why he's an anti-hero. But in this Earth and in this franchise, he's a hero and so are the rest of his people. My only qualm when it comes to the symbiotes, and it's only because of this one piece of dialogue, when the police detective is given the symbiote, because, and we'll go back to your toxin conversation to set this up, he was bonded to Toxin. And they mentioned how when he was dying, the symbiote actually abandoned him. That is why he's no longer Toxin. That Toxin left him to die, essentially.
Yeah, that part for me got very much glossed over.
Yeah. Easy to do because it's a quick little thing.
Yeah, I definitely didn't catch it. And so then I was totally confused.
Yeah. Luckily, that was a part that I happened to be laser focused on. Yay. That's awesome. But she says that, and then she says this other line where she's like, it's amazing that we have one that's bonded because it's so hard for them to bond or something, or to find one that like actually works.
I heard that.
The reason I'm bringing that up is they bonded so easily with all of the lab workers and the security guards. And I was like, that is the one piece. If you hadn't said that line, I have no qualms. But now you said that line and suddenly everybody's bonded and it's, all hunky-dory. Then I was a little like, you're contradicting yourself.
Let me throw this out there, and I could be wrong because I have not seen the first and second, mainly the first, since it came out. So 6 years ago, pretty much. I'm almost 100% sure, though, it's not about the bonding itself. It's about if it'll take. Because I think in the first one, because Eddie's not the one who finds it initially. He eventually is bonded with Venom, but Venom goes on a little journey, as he does in like every movie he's ever in, and kind of takes some time and hosts and whatever. I'm sure it's explained better in the first movie, and I'm probably going to butcher it to some degree, but I'm pretty sure everybody can be a host to some degree. It's whether or not it's going to take, and it can be a permanent situation like Eddie and Venom's. So in this case, the symbiotes could bond with all the scientists. That didn't necessarily mean it was going to be a permanent thing or that it was going to be a healthy symbiotic relationship. I think one example of one that probably would have been was the other doctor who wears the Christmas tree and her symbiote, because I also think she was already sympathetic to them. And I think there was a better chance that she was going to have a symbiote that was going to find her and bond with her naturally, and it would have been a healthy relationship. Otherwise, I think the symbiotes were just using / also saving the lives at the time, and then they all died. But at the time, saving the lives of all the scientists, I think they were just using them as host bodies, though, and to help fight the weird alien monster things.
Okay, fair push. That's a good point.
But can I talk about my thing that didn't quite make sense?
Yeah, go for it.
The weird monster things can only sense them when they are presenting the codex, essentially, the key. But then there'd be like random clips of these weird monster things still following them, even though they were no longer in that form. Even in Las Vegas, they're separated. They take Venom and then they take Eddie. They're not even in a symbiotic relationship at that moment. They are two different entities, and the monster followed them. And I thought that was so weird because then in other scenes of the movie, as soon as they power down, if you will, the monster's like, dang, no idea where this thing went. And it was very weird to me because I was like, so are they able to track them or not?
That's a good point. I think if I'm going to put something out to maybe make it make sense, it could be that like at that point it was clear, like there were less people around, right? Like it was kind of clear who the two separated entities were. And I think the Beast, after following them for so long, was starting to understand how to follow them even out of the codex. Like I think when there's so many bodies, it can't differentiate across the bodies. Like we saw, it doesn't see the way that you and I see. It sees moving forms. But in a space where there are fewer forms, I think it's easier for it to kind of differentiate and tell between, or at least know like, well, it was here and nobody left. So I'm going to follow this group and it's in there. Like the codex is there with all of these people. I just can't differentiate which one it is, but eventually they're going to to your point, power back up, and then I'll be able to find it.
That could be a totally fair point, but I should not have to make that assumption.
Yes, agreed.
And I hate to be that person, but you all know I always am. If you are completely unaware of what is going on and you walk into these movies blindly, these are things I should not have to try and fill in with my own assumptions. Because they also could not be true. They could just be an oversight that they were like, well, we have to get them to follow them somehow. Still, I don't like having to assume it had to go this way or the other way because you didn't show it to me properly, especially when on the screen you're explaining rules that you're not technically following.
This is how I feel about the multiverse in general, so you're preaching to the choir.
I understand, and that's what I was thinking about as I was saying that was everything about the multiverse. I do want to talk a little bit about the codex idea, mainly because, too, in our predictions, we touched on why is Eddie and Venom so important? Why are these two the big deal? The big cheese, if you will. We find out, apparently it's a thing, that if a symbiote brings back their host from essentially the dead, which again, totally forgot that Eddie was stabbed at some point. That was an amazing callback though.
I was going to say, I love that they brought it all the way back to the first movie.
That was very well done, in my opinion.
Yeah, agreed.
Bringing it back to that, he died. Venom brought him back by being the symbiote and taking him in as the host again and saved his life, therefore making them the codex, the key apparently to how Null gets out, which that in its own way is a little funky.
I was going to point that out too. I don't understand why. Like, if the symbiotes, it seems like the symbiotes were able to choose, right? Like, they put him in that prison. Why they chose the idea of them saving their host as the key, I'm not really sure, considering if they seem to be benevolent. They, seem to want to find hosts long term and have a truly symbiotic relationship. If that's the end goal, why would you create that many opportunities for Null to release himself?
Yeah, that seemed a little weird to me. It worked, I think, for the sake of the movie as a whole. If you aren't trying to tear it apart like we do, where we're trying to figure all the details out and understand the bigger effects and everything, you wouldn't probably think twice about it. Obviously, we are, because we do all this and we break down the entire movie. Whatever. Not one of the stronger things, but I accepted it. I thought it was interesting, though. Obviously, it answers the question. Like I said, it's Venom and Eddie. They're the only ones apparently who have this relationship right now. So them being together is what is making it possible for Null to possibly come out of his prison. Fine. It worked for me in the long run because every good trilogy, you lose something, and Eddie lost Venom. Venom sacrificed himself for the greater good. He understood that he loves Eddie and Eddie loves him, and they only said it was a year between all these movies, which is so crazy.
Eddie's poor life. I mean, I could not have handled what he handled in the last year.
Right. And also, to be fair, we've had 6 years between these movies. So to now tell me that everything that's happened between these 3 movies has happened within 1 year, I mean, I can't really fathom the thought of that right now. And when they said it, I was like, holy crap, what are you saying?
But it was so cute. I loved Venom. Okay, Venom's personality was like amazing in this. He's always had a great personality, but I think in this one it was even more because they are allowing each other to speak and have those moments. When he was like, it's been a year, like he's like celebrating an anniversary.
I know. He was like, oh my God.
I was like, why are you so precious?
I know. I enjoyed it. I just was shocked by the timeline.
Yeah, that one took me for a loop.
Well, and so much has happened off the screen in 6 years, right? I mean, we had an entire pandemic, guys. Look at all the projects Marvel has put out. I mean, these movies started before Endgame happened. That's how long this has been. But bringing it back, their relationship is extremely special. We saw that. And he had to lose Venom, which was heartbreaking. You had said you were like, I kind of was going to shed a tear. I'm not going to lie. I was too. When they realized they had to say goodbye. And the thing was Eddie didn't fully comprehend what that meant. And you could tell, versus Venom accepted that he cannot live, because the only other option would be Eddie can't live. And Venom would have never allowed for Eddie to not live anymore.
I don't even know where to start with this, because I mean, the fact that they made this as emotional as it was for, this character, especially in the way that they've set this up for the last 2 movies, to your point, being so funny and kind of lighthearted, and they're a little antagonistic towards each other, especially at the beginning. I mean, for them to reach this point where they're actually making me like tear up, I was like, that's actually great character development. Like, you have built a beautiful relationship that I have watched evolve over the past year, which is crazy. But the last year,
but for us, 6 years.
Yeah, to like see them get to this place. And I think it's so interesting because you're right. They were not on the same page about what this meant, because Eddie thought he was going with Venom. That's why he was like, let them come. He thought they were going to just absolutely take this sacrifice and make it together. And they were going to go out as friends. And it was going to be their last hurrah as the lethal protector. And that's what Eddie took from that conversation. And Venom was like, yeah, lethal protector, but actually I'm just going to protect you this whole time, and I'm going to let you think that you're going to, make this sacrifice with me, but there's not a world in which I'm going to ever let you die with me or in my place. And I thought that was so beautiful. And the fact that Lady Liberty became this like beacon of like this metaphor of their life and how it could be normal. And that's why when you were saying you didn't understand the point of the family, I do understand the point of the family. It is that is what Eddie could have, right? And that's what Venom is trying to say to him, because I actually think now that I'm like analyzing it and having, a little bit of time to kind of sit on things, I think Venom knew from a very, very early on that eventually he was not going to make it through this, that he was going to have to sacrifice himself. And that's why I think he was planting seeds to Eddie, saying, you would be a good dad. Isn't this the life we always wanted? Showing Eddie, like, you're gonna have a normal life. I'm not always going to be here. And just slowly kind of getting him ready to have that not break up, but like that have their bond broken. And I think that is so beautiful that he was willing to like know from that early on, but hide and protect his friend. And I think too, like, it could even tie into why he was willing to have that dance with Mrs. Chen. That was literally his swan song, literally his last dance, his opportunity to, see the people he wanted to see or have that time with them before he made that sacrifice that he knew very early on in the film he was going to have to make. And I think that's really beautiful, and it speaks a lot to the evolution, especially of the Venom character, because he was definitely not that kind or altruistic before he spent a lot of time with Eddie, and I thought that was really moving.
You made a lot of really good points there, and the one that I really like is Venom did know where this was going. I also think he probably has known for a while that he formed a codex. Because to me, what I read throughout this entire situation was the symbiotes are well aware. Let's look at the fact that as soon as all those other ones were released, they said, protect the codex, get them out of here. They know that they are not messing around with letting Null out. So I do think that, and I actually think it was the very first movie. I think that's when Eddie died.
I think you're right, yes. Because Tom looked really young.
Yeah. I think he's known that he created it on accident, and they've probably just been living life. But in the back of his mind, he's probably well aware that the day was going to come. And the day came.
Well, and don't forget when Eddie goes, well, it's a good thing neither one of us have died, right? Venom was like, dude, remember this? Like, he had the example ready to go. He knew. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. He knew, for sure. So I do think it wasn't just teeing it up in this movie. It was the fact that he probably has been well aware of it since that first movie happened. I think for them to make this so emotional made sense, though. These two characters, yes, it's a symbiotic relationship. Yes, it's Venom of all people, and it's Eddie Brock of all people, and I get it. From a different person's point of view, I can understand why this is wild. I know a lot of people who don't like the Venom franchise because think they made Venom too much of a joke and they don't like the direction it went, and I get it. I personally enjoy it. I think it's good. Again, Carnage wasn't the best. Primarily for me, it wasn't the best because of the lack of Carnage and the lack of making Carnage as scary as he should have been. Plus, you brought Woody Harrelson in to waste him. So I think that was just frustrating in itself. But I know it is. And I wanted to try and not say it, but I had to say it for the sake of it. Regardless, the movie itself was still fun. I still enjoyed this relationship throughout it. I say all this to say, you needed to make this emotional. This was more than a symbiotic relationship. These two were friends. They were pals. Even at the end, he tries to call out to him. He knows. He knows Venom wasn't there, but he is so used to him. And that's kind of why I almost hated that they put a timestamp on it, because I was like, as far as I'm concerned, it's been like 6 years. I have seen Eddie's life entirely fall apart in 3 movies. I don't think it's been a year, but you told me it was. Whatever. I genuinely felt like this relationship was so deep. And I guess it is different when you are literally together 24/7. There's no ability to not be together. So yes, 1 year probably feels like 5. But regardless of all of that, it was beautifully done. This relationship needed to be finished in a good way, and they did it. But I also think they did it in a way that the door's left open if we want it to be.
Yeah, and this goes to the credit scenes. I want to point something out that I was right about that is not necessarily related to the credit scenes, but it is in a tangential way. And in the predictions, you'll remember we talked about how it seemed like, and they tried to mislead us so deeply in the trailers, it seems like they take away the symbiote that Eddie left in 616. Well, they confirmed that he was actually in the same exact bar in 616 as he was in 688?
Yes.
And so it's the same bar, which is why that scene with Chiwetel Ejiofor, was his name Strickland? General Strickland, I think his character's name. I'm asking the wrong person.
I told you from the start of this episode that the names went right over my head.
I'm going to say it's Strickland because that feels right in my soul. So when Strickland takes that, that is the 688 version of that bar, not 616. So confirmed, we still have a symbiote in 616. Therefore, I was right. Love that. That doesn't happen a ton. So I just wanted to point that out. But going back to the end credits and what you were saying about keeping the door open, yes, you're right. Because that character, the bartender, who, by the way, my spidey senses were going off because he's actually relatively well-known actor in the sense that, like, I knew his face and I was like, this isn't just some extra who is brought in to play Venom or to play in Venom for a few scenes. This is someone who has a face card that people are going to recognize. He's actually in Ted Lasso, so that's a really well-received show. So that already was like, oh, I hope they don't waste this actor because this should be a bigger role. And then you get that end credit scene where I guess that's Venom on the cockroach. Is that what we're meant to think?
Yes, that is what I also assumed, which makes sense. I think we've seen you can't really destroy a symbiote fully. And I say you probably can, but we've seen, especially Venom, makes it through a lot. And he also just leaves like random pieces of himself everywhere anyway.
Well, and Strickland makes a comment where he talks about there's maybe a scientific term about him essentially shedding, and he's like, well, they just want to live. So he's literally like leaving pieces of himself so that if the main source of him, the main symbiote, dies, now he's in multiple universes. So like he could literally live forever.
I want to circle this conversation all the way back, actually, because I think this all is one bigger part. Because going back to the codex part of this has to carry. We need a codex in order for Null to come out. Clearly, whatever they say it's their planet, but from my understanding, it seems like they're in their own dimension or something.
Well, I do wanna bring something up, and I want to get your thoughts on it because I'm not 100% sure if this is a fully baked thought. But when Eddie says to him, oh, well, you left Null on your planet, Venom makes it very clear, no, we left him in his prison. They built an entire place for that to only function as his prison. So yes, it could be an entirely different dimension. Whatever it is completely separate from even the symbiote's home, it sounds like.
Right. And the reason I bring it up is if that's the thought process, technically speaking, the multiverse should be easy for him to kind of go wherever.
I mean, those look suspiciously like Doctor Strange level circles that he was making.
And I'm saying all of this, though, because this is all a big gift wrapped together that has to be said. We're seeing these end credits. We're seeing Venom lives. We know Venom is still in 616. There's a piece of him there. We've talked about, last week, 2 weeks ago, the rumor of the name of Spider-Man 4 is King in Black. Like, we've talked about the connection. Taylor had a great ladder theory where one thing led to another. And so far, it's still running. It's still going. She's not wrong yet. We just have to see the rest of it play out. But so far, the first few steps of that ladder have played out the way she had said it. And I don't remember if it was prediction, Sister Scoop, whatever it was. She's right. That being said, obviously it has to be Spider-Man who has the codex, right?
Yeah. So I think if I'm going to add a new level of detail to the theory that I gave, now having seen Venom: The Last Dance, I would say, because now I have that piece of why Venom, it obviously now has to be why Peter Parker. So he's going to get the black suit and he is going to be mortally wounded. Does that happen in Spider-Man 4? Does that happen in Secret Wars? I don't know. I don't know which one that happens in, but if he gets the symbiote in Secret Wars as the homage, like we talked about in predictions, it might happen it might have to happen in Secret Wars because then it would set up Spider-Man 4 to be King in Black. Guys, this is going to get a whole other episode, so if we're not, going into detail here, there's a reason.
Or making sense.
Yeah, look out for that because there will be a whole deep dive on what exactly happens in King in Black and what could Spider-Man 4 look like, which is funny because we definitely did a whole other episode earlier this year talking about Kingpin being Spider-Man 4. I think both are strong options. We're just putting everything on the table and covering our bases. But to get back to the conversation at hand, if Spider-Man is mortally wounded in Secret Wars, he bonds with the symbiote, it saves his life, that creates a codex. That would then explain why Null would be wanting to come. If universes are colliding, it's even easier for him to make that jump. And then we're setting up Spider-Man 4, where he is potentially fighting Null. I do want to caution that has to be a different plot line than the plot of Venom 3. So we have to be, I mean, King in Black is a different plot line, but we have to be careful too that it's not just him going after the Codex, because I do think that there was an element, I read it very quickly and I will be doing a deeper dive, but I do think there was a similar element in King of Black. Maybe come back to us when when we've done our full research for that episode, but I just want to make sure we're not rehashing Venom 3 at Spider-Man 4.
I don't think we will, because I don't think we're going to see that happen on screen. Not fully. This movie set up that the Venom universe itself is not necessarily done. We know the Doctor has a symbiote, the Speedster one. Cool. Very cool. We know a piece of Venom still exists, and it looks like that bartender's day is getting worse because Venom's about to find a new host. Tom Hardy said he would come back to play this role if he goes up against Spider-Man. I don't think it would make sense to be Tom's. He's also like, I mean, I know Tom himself is not. Hold on. There's a lot of Toms. I'm saying Tom, and I'm like, wait.
And they're both Tom H too, so you have to go full name.
I know. I'll go by last names. I know Hardy has already said he'll come back if he can fight a Spider-Man. I don't think it's going to be Holland's, because as far as in universes, quite an age gap. Let's go back to the source material, guys. Eddie Brock is not meant to be like 15 years older than Peter Parker.
They're rivals.
Yes. So I don't think they're going to mix there. Either way, that can keep the Venomverse here going. There can be more. He could come back and fight another Spider-Man, Andrew Garfield. Then again, like I said, you have that other symbiote. You have Venom still out there. There are still options in this universe itself. That being said, the Codex doesn't have to be Spider-Man Tom Holland version. It could happen. Maybe that Doctor's symbiote and her bond successfully, just like Venom and Eddie did, and she dies at some point, saves the life, whatever. The Codex happens. And we don't even necessarily have to see that, right? We watched this whole movie. We can get like a really quick, like, the Codex, the key happened. Something happened, and would it be ideal? No, but I don't need the full explanation. That could also allow him to come after our Spider-Man. So it doesn't necessarily have to be
true, because I guess where I was getting mixed up is he wouldn't be coming after Spider-Man because he would already need to have been released with the Codex. That's a good point.
Yeah. As soon as I said it and then you started going more on top of it, I was thinking about it and I was like, wait, that wouldn't make sense because of the Codex already having to have come out and whatever. So there'd be no reason to go after our Spider-Man.
You're right. It would never be the same plot line of Venom 3 because he would have to have been successful. I guess the question is then, why does he go after Spider-Man and why our universe?
To kill all the symbiotes. I think he's just going to go after all the symbiotes. When he's released, his children, I mean, clapping my hands lightly so you don't have to hear it in the mic. Can we talk about the comparison to Kronos here? This is literally Greek mythology at its finest.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's going to go after all his kids. They imprisoned him. They turned against him. He's going to go after all of them. And so I think he's going to be going after that other symbiote that's still alive in the Venomverse. He's going to go after that Venom. He's going to go after the Venom in 616, and that brings him right to Tom Holland Spider-Man's doorstep.
I actually think, and again, I skimmed the King in Black storyline because I was like, we're not adapting it in this film. I just need to have the top line on Null going into it. But from that skim, I do think that is the storyline where he is hunting down the symbiotes because he's PO'd, that they basically betrayed him and imprisoned him.
It's the fact I knew none of that. I did no research and that came to my mind. So I'll take it.
Look, that is what I remember on basic research. But again, I do want to emphasize we are going to have an entire episode dedicated to King in Black upcoming, where we will both have done nice research, truly be able to give you definitive basic plotline of King in Black and how it could be adapted to meet our Spider-Man for Spider-Man 4 based on the Null that we have just been introduced to fully in this film. So more to come. This is basic conjecture off me doing a little bit of research, but if you're interested in King in Black, please stay tuned for that episode because I think that that's something that could help inform what we might be seeing moving forward with a very important character who, by the way, Tom is out here, on the Tonight Show saying, hey, Spider-Man 4, it's happening. We've got a script. So it's happening, folks. The time is nigh. They're apparently starting to film next summer already. So it's time to start thinking about what is setting that up and where we're going. And I'm glad that we're having this conversation now. So stay tuned. King in Black in a couple episodes.
Exactly. I just had my theories to throw out there quick, but we will have more to say, as T had mentioned. I don't know what else I have to say about Venom personally right now. We just said it, gonna have more episodes. One of them is also gonna be about the future, which we kind of talked about a little bit here as well, where the Venomverse might go. Venom as a whole, Eddie as a whole, because he's in New York City randomly now, which was its own whatever. I don't know. I couldn't really figure out why.
That was a trip. That was cool. Where he belongs. So
Yeah, at the end of the trilogy, they were like, yeah, now we'll put Eddie in New York City. But whatever, that's fine. We'll do whatever we have to do. I did like this movie. I really did. If I watched it on my own, I could probably skip through a few parts that I felt were a little slower, but I would watch it again. I'm glad they finished the trilogy like this. I'm glad they went out with a bang because the second one, and so I'm really glad we did fix it. We righted the ship and somebody pull out the horse drawing. Front of it's great, middle of it's a little, and then the back of it's great too, because it was a great movie. I've been seeing a lot of positive feedback. I'm excited for those who are, I guess, well, by the time I just watched it, nobody's really watched it before any of us at this point yet. But now that you've listened to this, I hope you guys liked it. And if you watched this for some reason or listened to this for some reason and didn't see the movie, go see the movie. Weird way to do it, but go see the movie.
Here's what I'm going to say. If you watched the movie, hopefully you liked it as much as we did. Maybe it will entice you to watch the first two. Kind of makes me want to watch the full trilogy.
Yeah.
As a trilogy because it was such a great ending to it. And I loved the little scenes where it was calling back, he's walking in New York, he was calling back to their relationship. That was really just like fun and kind of cute. But anyway, tell everyone to watch this. Tell them not to sleep because Madam Web was a joke on this film. Don't let anyone use Madam Web as an excuse not to see Venom. Spread the word. It's solid, it's real, and it is well done.
And for context, guys, I saw these movies both the Thursday early showings, Madam Web and Venom. I went around the same time. I actually think I saw Madam Web maybe like 15, 30 minutes later. Let's not forget, I was the only person in the theater until about a third of the way into the movie when two people, a couple, showed up late to the movie.
Well, it was also Valentine's Day or the day before or something like that.
I don't think it really matters. My point here is this theater, and I can even compare it to, and I know why, but I can even compare it to the Marvels and some of the other Marvel movies that have come out because I see all of them Thursdays around 5 o'clock, 5:30, whatever. This was one of the most packed theaters I've been in on a Thursday night in a long time.
Wow. My theater was almost empty, but then again, my theaters are almost always empty, so.
No, we had genuine groups of people there. There was a crowd walking out of that movie.
Wow.
Yeah. And that shocked me. And that in itself, and I said it, I think, in the predictions, everybody turns out to an end of a trilogy. And this character and this story was so different. And it was a gold mine in its own way that it didn't matter what you did or didn't know. People wanted to watch it. And if you watched the first or second one, people were like, well, I might as well finish it. Let's go.
And they were pleasantly surprised, I'm sure, because it is just a well-crafted movie, period, the end.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we have probably emphasized how we feel about Venom enough, but we are glad that you also went out to go see it. Hopefully you enjoyed it as much as we did. Please stay tuned. Katie's going to let you know what's coming up in terms of future episodes for Sisters Assembled, but we have a lot of good content coming down the pike. More Venom to come. Spoiler alert as part of that. If you're interested in keeping up with our future episodes, you can follow us on your podcast platform of choice. Check out the website. As we always say, it is really the home to everything related to the show and just a good place to check out. Last but not least, if you would be interested in supporting us in any way, our Buy Me a Coffee is linked in the show notes as well.
You guys can also follow us on all of our socials, which are in the show notes, and on our YouTube, which has all of our Sister Scoop news segments. So go ahead and check those out every week. We aren't done with Venom, but we will take a small little break because we have to finish Agatha All Along. Episodes 8 and 9 are coming out, and we will be covering those with our reactions. And then we'll take a little trip back to Venom. As we mentioned, we have 2 so far. I think 2, but you never really know what might happen. 2 episodes for sure that will be a continuation of Venom. So keep an eye out for those. And we're hoping you're also keeping up with Agatha All Along because it's an amazing, amazing show. So make sure you're keeping up with that. You're keeping up with Venom because Marvel just blew your mind and kind of Sony, actually. So let's talk about it.